Testing. All right. What's up, guys? I'm Jacob Blitzo, your Elixir Mentor, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Elixir Mentor Podcast. This is where we discuss everything related to Elixir, from interviews with enthusiasts, pioneers in the community, to innovative projects and libraries shaping Elixir's future. So let's get started. Today, I'm thrilled to have Tony Deng joining us. Tony is a very talented web developer who recently created a very cool offline-enabled LiveView app. So Tony, thank you so much for being here. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your background is and kind of how you got involved with Elixir?
All right, so hi everyone. My name is Tony Deng, and I'm a web developer from the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And I guess my background is that I started out my career actually as a mechanical engineer, and I was a mechanical engineer and engineering project manager for about 10 years. But then around 2020, I decided that I needed something different, so I took a year off. And I basically took a full 1 year sabbatical. And during that time, I picked up a book on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I was like, man, this is pretty fun. So I pretty much went down that rabbit hole for the next couple of years, just self-teaching myself. So I've been through a lot of languages. I did a little PHP, a little JavaScript, a little Python. And it was only recently, I think around October or November of last year, when I started looking into Elixir. And I've pretty much just been learning Elixir since then. So yeah, time flies. It's been like half a year now since I started learning Elixir. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I got into Elixir.
That's awesome. And look at you. You're already making all these ripples and getting everyone's attention with cool projects.
Yeah, no, I definitely consider myself still an Elixir newbie, 1%.
I'm learning. So I've been developing with Elixir for like 3 years, and I feel like I'm still learning new stuff, every day.
Yeah, no, there's just so much to learn.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and starting this channel actually has forced me to learn at a lot deeper level. So I'm grateful for that, because it's made me a better engineer in the last year and a half that I've done this. And it's funny. I actually started off my career. I went to school for civil engineering.
Oh.
And specialized in pre-stressed concrete. Graduated and ended up doing more of electrical engineering. I did a lot of factory automation stuff. And then I just was over it, and I self-taught myself how to program. And now I've been developing for just over 8 years now. So similar paths, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It sounds like you have all the skills, a little civil, mechanical, a little electrical, now programming. You can pretty much be like Tony Stark now.
Yeah, I'm ready. I can just create my Iron Man suit.
Yep.
That's funny. I feel like when you're an engineer, you already kind of think the way an engineer should. And I think that's the hardest part for especially self-taught programmers. They have a hard time breaking up concepts into functional steps, right? They have trouble breaking things down. And I think if you already have that mindset, it's a lot easier. You kind of have a head start when you start learning how to develop or write code.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. From mechanical engineering and just engineering in general, one of the concepts that definitely I brought over is thinking about maintainability and scalability, because you build something, regardless of whether or not it's a physical product or a software product, you have to think about the same things. So definitely there are those concepts that, transfer over.
Yeah, exactly. So you've been writing Elixir for 6 months. And
yes, definitely. Yeah.
What brought your attention to, so I guess let's give a little background, why you got on my radar, because you made a really cool offline-enabled Phoenix LiveView to-do list app. And so was this your first project where you even started playing around with LiveView, or what was what kind of like made this idea
Yeah.
come into
Yep.
existence?
Yes. So this is my first project using Phoenix and Elixir actually, and LiveView for that matter. So I started learning Elixir. So I went through pretty much all the documentation, the official documentation, and then I went through the Phoenix documentation, and I also went through the Pragmatic Studio courses. So that's pretty much all the learning I did. And then after that, I decided, it's time to actually get my hands dirty and build something and not just follow tutorials anymore. And I decided, okay, so I need an idea of what to do. And the reason why I chose the to-do list is because I actually previously had built a to-do list using JavaScript, and it worked and all that. But one of the things I never implemented was like offline capabilities. And the reason why that is important to me is because this to-do list is actually something I personally use. And whenever I live in this place where whenever I go into the elevator to leave the building, I lose internet connection and the to-do list just doesn't work anymore. And then also, whenever I go to Costco, it's like this grocery store we have here. Um, the internet connection is also spotty. And then I have a checklist of items I want to get, and now it doesn't work, right? So it just sucks. So when I decide I need a project to do, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to rebuild this. I'm going to make it work offline, and I'm going to leverage LiveView because I wanted to add one more feature, which is to have all of my lists auto sync across devices and auto save because it does that, right? So that's why I went down this path. But of course, as you know, with LiveView, it's a server-side technology, and you need that open WebSocket connection in order for things to work. So I'm like, man, this is actually going to work, right? This like fundamentally sounds like it doesn't work. Yeah, so I basically I was still learning LiveView though, and I really like the mental model, right? It's just like, it's so simple. You update your state in your socket and everything renders. Everything's just super simple. And the broadcasting of events across multiple devices, all that works well. The only thing missing was the offline capability. So I started looking at how to solve this, and that's when I ran into a couple YouTube videos. The first one was one where there's an engineer, he made a Svelte kit PWA, except he was using Elixir on the back end for the real-time capabilities. And I was like, well, this is kind of what I wanted to do, but it wasn't using LiveView, right? So it's basically a single page app and then your Phoenix backend. But I didn't want that complexity, right? So I started looking a little further, and then I saw another talk where basically the speaker combined Svelte with LiveView, and I was like, man, this is really cool. Like, but of course, implementing it is hard, which is when I saw this third talk. So it's someone that you interviewed previously, Wout, and he made a library called Live Svelte.
Wout is awesome, and he
Yeah.
was so like I asked him so many dumb questions, and he was great.
Yeah. So he pretty much did all the hard work of integrating Svelte and LiveView together. And all I did was I took his library to build my app. And of course, LiveSvelte, just using LiveSvelte doesn't give you offline support right out of the box. There's still a lot you have to do, but it basically gave me the building pieces I needed in order to build out the app. So like in terms of like missing pieces, like the one thing you have to do is, well, let me step back a little bit. So what happens is if we want to build an offline app with LiveView, the first problem is that when the internet connection is gone and we don't have our socket connection, we have to somehow be able to still have interactivity on our web page. And of course, the way to do that is with JavaScript, right? So Live Svelte helps with that because when we render with Live Svelte, we're able to keep state on the client side using Svelte. And if we have like click events or whatever, we don't have to send an event back to the server. We can just handle that locally on the client. So that is like step number one, is we were now able to keep state on the client. And then the second thing is, this is all great and all, but if we were to refresh the page, the JavaScript and the HTML, nothing loads in the first place.
Everything
right?
is broken. Yeah.
Yeah. So the second thing you have to do is you have to add in a service worker. So a service worker is something available pretty much in all modern browsers. Think of it as, so that you have your, your app.js, right? That's your main JavaScript program that's running.
Hmm.
But if the service worker is background process that runs in parallel to that main thread, and it has some cool features specifically used to support offline apps. And what it can do is, whenever you make a request to the server and you get a response back, you can actually cache those responses. So in the case of like a Phoenix application, um, whenever we make the first request to the server and we get a response back, we can cache the HTML, the CSS, JavaScript, or any other assets like images or whatever, and have that all available in the cache. So now, whenever we go offline and someone does a page refresh, everything, instead of going to the server, like we'll still make a request to the server, but because the server is not there, we're going to tell the service worker, hey, just load everything from the cache instead. So that solves the problem of, oh, okay, so now we have interactivity, and now we can load our assets even without an internet connection.
Yeah, I thought the
So
service worker was a really cool way to like intercept and kind of be the middleman, right? So
yeah,
it either returns you cached data or it requests new data from the server.
yeah. And one of the nice things is it was uh, it was like kind of happy coincidence that service workers actually don't intercept WebSocket requests. So the nice thing is that there's like a separation of what is being cached and what's not being cached. So
Okay.
everything, so I'm basically using everything that I need a server for. I send it, so data, for example, through the service worker, and everything else that needs to be cached is going through the service worker, so HTML, CSS,
Hmm.
JavaScript. But yeah, so there's all that. And I guess the third piece of the puzzle is now we have state on the client, and we also have state on the server. So now what happens, right? Because if we have a bunch of clients that's keeping track of their own state, we're going to get state that is out of sync among
Yep.
different, yes, among
Now
different
you, now
clients.
you have the problem of conflicts.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and in my app, the way I solve this is using a library called YJS. And what that library does is it's a library for uh, what is called CRDTs, which is conflict-free replicated data type. I can never get it right, but and
I made a note. Yeah,
yeah,
conflict-free replicated data type. You nailed it.
yes. And basically, it's a data structure that allows you to merge conflicting states and always have it come out to the same merge state. So you can kind of think of it as Git, right? So you have uh, two Git branches, right? So different states on different Git branches. And then you do a Git merge, and then your changes are merged together. The one difference here is it's conflict free, which means, when we do a Git merge, right, you could have a state where uh, there's a merge conflict, and then you
Merge
have
conflicts is every new developer's nightmare,
yeah,
right?
it's still my nightmare too. So, um, and when you have that, you have to go in and manually resolve the merge conflict, right?
Hmm.
But with a CRDT, when you do the merge, there will never be a conflict. So for example, like let's say two people update the same item, the algorithm will either decide that one of the writes wins, or it could decide that, hey, we'll just keep both of the items, but there'll never be a conflict. So that way, the state, whenever you merge it, will be the same no matter which client are even on the server. Whenever you do a merge, it's like deterministic, and the resulting state will always be the same.
So I haven't really used YJS, so this might be a dumb question,
Yeah.
but can you control the conditions that you use for like what state is chosen?
No, so YJS is it's a set algorithm,
Okay.
and you don't have control over that, as far as I know, unless there's like um, some part of the API that I haven't seen. But from
Okay.
reading the docs, I didn't see any options to change that.
Okay. I mean, it's probably better, right? Than
Mhm.
it's magic, right?
Yeah, I think some magic's good, and in this case, I think it's good. And I think obviously you have to think about what your use case is and whether or not this algorithm works for you.
Yeah.
For my to-do app, it works perfectly fine.
Like I'm curious if it like you know how you did your really basic example of how it
Mhm.
works with like based off timestamps and
Yeah.
everything.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious if you're tracking local state from the client side and you're using different time zones. I wonder if that can affect anything on the YJS side.
Uh, so, like I said, the example that I put with the timestamp is a very basic example.
Right, of
And
course.
the actual YJS algorithm, I am sure, is doing a lot more than
Hmm.
just comparing timestamps. I'm definitely not aware of the entire algorithm and how it works underneath, so I can't explain that. But I am quite sure that the engineers behind it have put a lot more thought into it than just that.
Yeah, I'm sure they have.
Uh-huh.
So now in your first video that you made, which I don't know if I linked it in the description, but I'll do that after this. I know I linked
Mhm.
your website and your Twitter handle,
Mhm.
but your first video you do a great walkthrough of this whole project, and you originally were using YJS server side and client side.
Correct.
Okay, so and then you created you kind of you made a new video updating that you removed it server side
Mhm.
and you only using it client side.
Mhm.
What were your reasons for doing that? I guess relying fully on the client versus using the server at all.
Yep. So let's go back a bit and just to explain for anyone else listening is, so in my original implementation, so I have YJS running on the client side, and then on the server, in order to do the merging, I was also running YJS, but YJS doesn't have an Elixir port. So the way I did it was I made a Cloudflare worker function. So it's basically a cloud function where you can run JavaScript. And I made a request to that Cloudflare worker where the YJS merge happens. And then that request would be sent back. And then the merge the merge happens on the Cloudflare worker, gets sent back to the Phoenix server, and then the merge state gets saved into the database. And everything worked fine, except for one day I saw that my Cloudflare worker function like was down for some reason, and I couldn't figure out why. And I was like, man, you know what? I'm not going to deal with like all these extra external dependencies anymore. I'm just going to try to see if I can have everything work on the Phoenix server. And that's when I realized that it was actually not necessary to have that um, to have YJS run on the server at all in order to sync the clients. Um, the way you could do it is you can just have the server be completely dumb. And what you do instead is you would send your YJS state to the server. And all the server actually does is it keeps a copy of that state. And then whenever another client connects to the server, that YJS state is sent down to the client, and the merging happens on the client side. So as I mentioned in my follow-up video, this works and works pretty well for my simple app. But there are definitely performance concerns using this approach, because what we're doing, because we don't have a server to do any merging anymore, we're just sending the entire app state back and forth. So if you have like a really big app state, that's definitely not going to scale. Ideally, what you would want is you want to only send the updates. Whenever there's a change made on the client, you send only the update, and then on the server, you merge that update into the server state. And then whenever you have a client that needs the updates, it sends a request to the server, asks for a diff, and it only gets the changes that it doesn't have yet. And that would be the most efficient way. Of course, like the way I'm doing it right now, because the server is completely dumb, then you can't do that, right?
Right. Well, I feel like it would be a little more complicated, but you could just track, you'd have to track every state that's available, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so it would definitely make things a little more difficult.
Yeah. I actually started thinking about that, because I'm like, man, can I make this work? And the one, uh, and I think it could work if you have make a few assumptions. Because one way it could work is instead of storing the entire state on the server, right? You just send you only send updates to the server, and you basically have a table that has a list of every single update,
Hmm.
right? And then on the client, you keep track of which updates have been applied already. And so you can do the diff that way, right? But eventually you're gonna, well, first of all, that your table is just gonna grow and grow and grow and grow, right? And that would be a problem unless you can somehow say that all your clients, you can, you know, let's say if you had a finite number of clients, then this actually might work, because you can track to see whether or not all the clients on a finite list have gotten the updates up to a certain point, right? And then
Hmm.
if they did, then you can just prune all the updates that you previously had. So that's the only way I can see it working.
I feel
Otherwise, yeah.
you could
Uh,
also you could expire states too. Like if a state gets too old and a client hasn't checked in, you could just
uh,
assume they're getting the most recent state when they do.
but
But
again,
oh
remember,
yeah,
we're talking
yeah,
about
never.
updates.
That's
Yeah,
right, because they could have updates from being offline.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
shoot. Yeah, that is hard.
Yeah, exactly, right? So yeah, it's definitely hard. And honestly, to tell the truth, I think the best way is actually just to be able to run YJS on the server. That would be the simplest way, because everything else honestly sounds kind of like a hack. And
Hmm.
the only reason I think you would ever do it this way, well, two reasons. Number one is if you're like me and you just want something simple, then you have a dumb server and send the entire state. Or the only other use case I can see for this is if you need end-to-end encryption. So let's just say, on your client, you have some state, and let's say this to-do app is like a secure to-do app, right? And you don't want anyone else seeing what's on your like to-do list.
Yeah.
Then it would make sense to send this data encrypted to the server, and then when you send it back down, you decrypt it, and then you do the merging there. And that would make sense for this use case as well.
Hmm.
Uh, and before we move on, I actually want to mention this thing came on my radar yesterday. It's a library slash framework called, let's see, Xtism. So it's spelled EXTISM. And what that library allows you to do is compile pretty much any language you want. So let's say in this case, JavaScript uh, to WASM. And then you can run in any language, and in this case, Elixir can run WASM on the server to run JavaScript. Does that make sense? It's like
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Well, That sounds pretty cool. If
Uh-huh.
it works as well as it sounds.
Yeah. So I haven't played with it yet, but it's on my like to-do list of like many things to try. Um,
Because then you'd be able to run YJS as is
uh-huh.
on your Elixir server.
Exactly. So you basically just compile YJS to WASM and then use Elixir to run WASM, and therefore running YJS.
Okay. Yeah, that would be cool. I think like with what you have available, the way you're doing it is the probably the best approach to keep things simple, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, ideally, if you had YJS on your server, that would solve all your problems.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it would solve so many things.
I love that. We
Mhm.
do have a couple questions. Some of them kind of, I guess, shifted a little bit. You're also a solid JS dev, right? I think I saw that.
Not solid as in the framework solid.
Yeah.
No, I've actually never touched solid before.
Oh, okay. So we're probably not going to be able to answer this question, but
Mhm.
Carl asked if you have any opinions on solid JS with Elixir rather than Svelte, because he says it's the best reactivity model that he's seen.
Yeah, I have no experience with solid.js, so I can't make any opinions there,
And then
unfortunately.
let's see, have you considered using PouchDB for the state? I don't even know what PouchDB is.
Same here. I've heard of it, but I haven't used it at all, so I don't know.
But I'm sure it's possible.
Hmm.
And then couldn't you have used YJS in the Elixir server, have a gen server taking all the new states and merge them? Well, it sounds like if you use WASM, that could be potentially a really good solution.
Yeah, so you could run YJS on the same Elixir server. There's multiple ways to do that, right? Like you could use the WASM idea that I just said. There's actually a Rust port of YJS, and I think you can run Rust via Rustler in Elixir. And of course, the other thing you could do is you can just spin up a node server along your Elixir server on the same server,
Hmm.
and then run YJS. There's like a lot of different options, and yeah, that could simplify things rather than like shooting off to a separate server somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. I know it's on my to-do list, so I only know the title. But so Fly.io has a great blog, and
Mhm.
they recently I saw a blog post where they basically show you how to, how Rust and Elixir play nice together, how you can have
Mhm.
them in the same project.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would probably be super beneficial.
Mhm. Yeah, and if there is a good, easy way to run Rust, then there's already a YJS port
There
for
we
Rust.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know Discord. They use Rust for all their like heavy lifting, and then they use Elixir for the concurrency and um, of course now I'm blanking, but scalability and distribution,
Uh-huh.
distributed nodes and things. But yeah, so it's possible, and those are probably the two best technologies to combine for a chat app like Discord.
Yeah. And it works pretty well, so.
It does. I can't complain.
Mhm.
All right, so let's see. All right. Yeah. So I'm trying to think of, is there any other way? So, like, I know Svelte brings like props and the available for client side, like state and anything and everything. Is there no way to track like local state just using Phoenix LiveView?
As for, well, I mean, with
Because
not
you're
without
constantly,
JavaScript.
yeah, because you're constantly relying on your sockets and event handlers. So you'd have to fully do JavaScript like hooks and things. And
Yeah, so you could definitely, like, Svelte is definitely not the only way you can make a Phoenix app work offline. Uh,
mhm.
any JavaScript solution, any JavaScript framework would work. At the end of the day, what it really comes down to is you need to somehow be able to manage state, uh, like somehow in memory. So So you need JavaScript for that. And if you want to persist that state, then you need to save it to some kind of local storage. And by that, I mean actually local storage or session storage or IndexedDB. Those would be the three probably big ways to do it. So yeah, like there, as far as I know, I can't think of any way you would do it unless you use JavaScript in some form.
Yeah, just because the server-side rendering kind of throws a wrench in things.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you end up using IndexedDB, or what was your solution for your local
Yeah,
database?
so
Yeah.
actually a little bit of everything. So it depends on, so all the YJS state is stored in IndexedDB.
Okay.
So there is a YJS adapter, which makes it seamless. Like I pretty much I didn't have to touch the IndexedDB API whatsoever. And all the YJS state is stored in there. But there's like a couple things that I stored in local storage because there's some state that you don't need to have stored in the YJS state that's being sent around. So for example, if I have my app open on two browser tabs and it's offline, it's still synced between the two browser tabs. And that state is being stored in local storage. And then I have a little bit in session storage because I think there was, so like presence tracking, right? So one thing I wanted to do with the app is add in a little bit of Phoenix presence. And one of the bugs I found was that if you have multiple socket connections, sometimes you have like zombie sessions, right? So let's say you have 4 tabs open on the same browser, and you keep disconnecting and reconnecting all of them. You only have 4 sessions in theory, but then on the Phoenix side, sometimes the session doesn't get pruned right away, and you see more than 4 sessions.
Oh, probably because they don't get the pub sub event, right? Or the broadcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then I was like, oh, what's going on, right? So then that's why I kept a little bit of state in session storage because session storage allows you to store state that is unique to a single browser tab. And you track, and basically if you put an ID, a unique ID for that session in session storage, you can compare that ID with your presence on the server, so that if you have multiple sessions with the same ID, you only count them one time.
Okay. How do you clean up the zombie presence? Like when they reconnect, does it clean up?
Yeah, so it automatically cleanups. But the reason why there's these zombie sessions is that they don't get cleaned up fast enough.
That makes sense.
They always like if you wait long enough, the session count will eventually converge to the correct number.
Okay. But yeah, with real time and you caring about keeping state in sync, that does matter.
Yeah.
So you're just constantly comparing local storage of presence essentially to the actual presence.
So it's just whenever you get the presence count from the server.
You have a tab ID. I'm sorry, that's what you said, right?
Yeah, you basically have an ID for the tab, and that tab ID might be associated with multiple presences on the server. So whenever you get a presence count to show, you just filter the extra IDs.
Okay. That's cool. I fully rely on presence working. I never realized that there could be zombie sessions.
Yeah, I think it's only because I worked on this like offline app that I noticed this.
Yeah,
Because I kept like disconnecting and connecting, right?
Wow, offline support really throws a lot of issues that you have to worry about. But
Yeah, no, for sure.
that's good to know because I'm building a game server for a client right now, and presence matters because we can only allow one. Basically, they authorize through Twitch, and so we can only allow one person to play the game that they're supposed to play. And yeah, now I have to think about this more.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna have to go back to my drawing table on this one.
Yeah, sometimes you won't know what problems you run into until you actually build the thing you
Yeah.
want, right? So,
Well, and in development, everything usually works great. And
hmm.
then when you start taking it into a testing environment or production, you run into all the real world issues.
Oh no, for sure. Yeah, no, there was like definitely a lot. But thankfully for my project, most of the problems I had was definitely with like the offline support. Everything else, like on the Phoenix Elixir side, was easy. Honestly, the UI part was easy. The hardest part was really just the service worker setup.
Hmm. Well, like working with like Phoenix LiveView and like all the online pieces of your puzzle, I feel like they're the easiest technologies to work with and build things quickly.
Hmm.
So when you tackled this project, what was like the most difficult thing that ended up being that might have surprised you a little bit?
The most difficult thing. Uh, so one of the issues, so when I started this, right, I was trying to get when I was trying to get LiveView working offline. The first thing I did was I added in Live Svelte, which gives you the client side state, right?
Hmm.
But one of the issues I ran into was so if you use Live Svelte in a live view, Svelte will only run after the live view mounts. So basically, it kind of comes down to Phoenix hooks, right? So Phoenix hooks would only run after the live view has mounted. So that works if you have the page already loaded
Hmm.
and you go offline, the JavaScript already loaded. But let's say now you're offline and you go to a live view route, the WebSocket connection never opens, which means your JavaScript never runs.
Hmm.
So it's a problem right here, right?
Yep.
So, uh, and I was trying to figure this out for the longest time, and I was trying all these like crazy stuff. So the first thing I tried to do was to make this work. I actually had a separate dead view where I also run the same app. And let's say if you have internet connection, when you connect, you just stay on the live view and everything works as normal.
Hmm.
But if your internet connection goes off, what I did back then, which is this is a bad idea, by the way, is I had a little script that would switch you over to the dead view, and it would just load the dead view instead without the socket connection with the same app,
Okay.
and everything would
So
work
you're
there
just
as well.
loading like static HTML at this point and maybe some cached client side data.
Uh, it's the YJS data, so
Okay. Yep.
all that's
Yeah.
already, yeah. So you would load the all your cache assets, so your HTML, JavaScript, and your YJS data in a dead view.
Okay.
Uh, but this started, it was working, but it was just like so complicated because there was like this logic that I had to check for like whether you're online and offline, and you had to like do this constant switching between the two. And because when you go back online, you have to switch back to the live view in order to get the WebSocket connection, in order to do the data syncing, right?
Yeah.
So it was getting really complicated. And then that's when I forgot which podcast I was listening to, and Chris McCord was talking, and he was like, "Hey, so it's actually possible to embed a live view into a dead view." And I was like, "Whoa, wait, you can?" And that actually changed everything because the app I have right now and final implementation, all the routes are actually served via dead view, but I have an embedded live view in the dead view. So there's a function in
Okay.
Phoenix, it's called render live view or something. think I wrote it down somewhere, but I think it's called Render Live View. I'm not 100% sure, but it was something like that. And it allows you to render a live view into your dead view. And you can actually render multiple live views in the same dead view if you want. I believe it's not suggested.
Okay.
Um, but
I just
so
learned something new. This is amazing.
yeah, I didn't know about it either. And I honestly don't know if there's many use cases for it, except for something like this, where the reason why this helps a lot and simplifies things like a lot is because now you just, whenever you load your dead view, regardless of whether or not you have internet connection or not, your app is going to run client side with no
Hmm.
issues. And then if there is a internet connection, then your live view will automatically connect. And then you have your socket connection and you can do all your broadcasting of data um, as if you were on a live view route.
That's really cool. Now I have to learn about dead views and
Uh-huh.
rendering live views inside them.
Yeah, trust me, it's very easy. It's like a one-liner. So you just write your live view as usual and
Yeah.
just throw that live view tag into a dead view and there
Okay.
you have it. Yeah.
No, that's really cool.
Hmm.
I like learning this stuff. I like learning new things.
Hmm.
Let's see. Rico has another question. He goes, all this learning for his own to-do app. Wow. Are you doing any work in Elixir or are you building any business with Elixir at the moment?
Nope, this is all just my personal learning. I would love to work in Elixir, but no, unfortunately, I am not doing any professional work in Elixir at the moment.
He also says, wow, you need to keep making videos. I agree. Tony does a great job breaking down. You did a great job breaking down your project and tasks, and you present everything so cleanly, and it's awesome. I think
Mhm.
definitely have to keep making videos. What is your day job, if you can tell us?
I am actually not working anywhere at the moment, and I'm
Okay.
actually looking for new opportunities. So,
Okay.
no
Well,
current day
there,
job.
dude, the tech world is a disaster right now.
Hmm.
Did you see that
Yeah,
Google just laid off a ton of their like core team members from
I think
like
I
a
saw
bunch of
something.
projects across the board? Like it's insane.
Yeah,
No.
no, it's definitely not the greatest time right now to be a developer in terms of the job
No.
market, at least.
Yeah, it's not the greatest. But
Hmm.
so what are you doing? Do you have any side projects that you're building? Are you just learning right now and
Yeah,
building on your
mostly
skills?
learning right now. There's a couple more things I wanted to do with the To-Do app. Honestly, I don't know when I'll actually get to it. So there were a couple features I still wanted to do. One would be uh, the whole YJS state thing, right? I think if I have time, I want to try out that library that I mentioned earlier, Xtism, so
Mm,
that you can actually run YJS on the server, just to make things more scalable and performant. The other thing I wanted to look at was what to do about offline auth. So right now I'm using Phoenix's built-in authentication. So the one you get from Phoenix Gen Auth,
hmm.
and it works well. The only problem is if you're offline, then you can't log out, right? So, and you also can't log in. And so right now what happens is if you're offline, you try to log in, you just can't log in,
Right.
and that's fine. And then if you're logged in, if you try to log out, then there's a message that prompts you and says, oh, hey, you have to be online in order to log out. But I think there is actually a workaround where you can, if you want to log out locally, it's possible to just encrypt the data and store it locally in local storage or somewhere. And then that way you can log in and log out even if you're offline.
Hmm.
So that's a feature I wanted to do. Um, but again, I don't know when I'm going to get to it. And then lastly is I wanted to add in like a data export feature to the app. And that one's probably the simplest one. Um,
Yeah, just what, export it as PDF or something?
yeah,
Just
PDF,
a shareable format.
CSV, yeah,
Yeah.
probably CSV or JSON or something like that.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so those would be like the things if I were to
If
continue.
you do offline auth, you definitely have to make a video. I think that'd be super fascinating.
Uh-huh. So I actually I was helping out this one startup company a month ago, and we actually implemented offline authentication using local storage and WebAuthn. And there is actually it's like a demo video, so it doesn't really go over the technical details of how it works, but it is possible to do.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that sounds cool.
yeah.
That sounds really cool. I know a question like from my little like community, everyone always wants more like authentication videos
Uh-huh.
because like obviously using the Phoenix auth gen is the easiest way to go.
Yeah,
And like a lot of people want to know how you integrate like, OAuth and things like that. And
yeah.
I think I'm probably going to do a live stream. I
Hmm.
know I've promised this to people already, but I want to do a live stream where I integrate Auth 2 from Twitch
Uh-huh.
into still using like a lot of the generated code from the Phoenix Auth, but like using the Auth 2 token and things like that. And I think there's a lot to benefit from learning how to implement systems like that because once you can do OAuth, you can pretty much implement anyone that uses OAuth.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that definitely interests me as well. I've implemented OAuth with GitHub and Google a couple of times in JavaScript projects. But I'm pretty sure like the process is pretty similar going into a Phoenix project.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I've been getting interested in passkeys. I'm not sure if you've used those before.
I haven't used them. I know what they are, but
Yeah.
yeah, why don't let's hear about it.
Yeah, so passkeys is so are you familiar with the biometric sign-in available on your laptop or mobile
Hmm.
devices?
Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine when you go to a website, instead of entering your password, it actually prompts you to sign in via PassKey. And by that, it means using your biometrics like a thumbprint or Face ID or whatever.
Okay.
And um, the nice thing about this is that number one, you don't have to use a password. And number two, you don't have to be reliant on a third party server anywhere. So like on a Google or other OAuth provider. So the way it works is, let's say you have your website, you first have to register a passkey. And when you register a passkey, your device, so let's say you have a MacBook, right? Uh, when you register that passkey on your MacBook locally, it creates a private key that is only stored on your laptop. And then with that private key, it also generates a public key. And that public key is sent to the server and stored in your database.
Okay.
So now the next time you go to this web app, um, it will prompt you can be prompted to sign in via passkey. And what happens is you use your thumbprint or other biometrics, and you get a signed passkey signature that is sent to the server. And the server validates that signature using the public key that it has stored for you.
Okay.
So, and that's how you sign in. And again, I think this is really cool because number one, you don't have to worry about passwords anymore. It's a
Hmm.
better user experience because you get two-factor authentication using one motion, right? Because normally two-factor authentication, you need your password, they send you an email code or whatever.
Right.
Uh, but here, you only do one thing. And it seems like it's not two-factor authentication because you're doing one action, but that actually is because,
Well, the hardware you're on is
yeah,
essentially your key, right?
exactly. So that's your
Yeah.
second factor. And then the other factor is who you are, right? So like with passwords, it's like what you have, who you are, and what you know, right?
Hmm.
And with passkeys, it is what you have, your laptop, and who you are, your thumbprint. And so when you sign in this way, it's just a very good UX, and you don't have to worry about like data breaches
I was
anymore.
gonna say it's probably a lot more secure because if you're actually like, if someone's zeroing in on you to hack accounts,
Hmm.
if you're getting the two step, like if you're getting an auth number texted or emailed to you,
Hmm.
like those aren't that secure,
No.
because you can have people. One of my old bosses that I worked for, he was attacked for like a crypto thing,
Hmm.
and they actually duplicated his SIM card, and the mobile provider doesn't know it's a duplicate SIM card for
Hmm.
like 2 to 4 hours. So they
Yeah.
were receiving all his text messages, and they
Yeah.
got like a two-step auth key
Hmm.
from a duplicate SIM card. So
Yeah.
this way they'd have to steal your computer.
Yeah. They had to steal your computer and they had to steal you.
Now, I'm
Or today.
curious how does the pass key work if you're jumping between devices?
Yeah. So there's like a Bluetooth connection that works. So I haven't implemented this myself, but I saw it in action.
Okay.
And let's say you are going to like a public library computer, right? And you want to log in. So it'll prompt you for passkey. And when that prompt comes up, there's an option to select your passkey from another device. And all this is built into the browser. So you don't have to implement any of this yourself. And you would basically bring up your phone and um, link it. I think there's a QR code you scan or something. And then it does a Bluetooth sync to that computer, which will allow you to send your sign key over to the public computer to be sent to the server.
Without ever transferring your private key, which is
Yes.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to
Yep. So
I'll have to look into this.
yeah, and I saw actually someone made a library for this the other day in for Phoenix Elixir.
Oh,
So
nice.
I will send you the link if I can find it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely send that. That would be really cool. That would make good content for sure.
Mhm.
I love that.
Mhm.
We have a question from Richard. He wants to know if you have any knowledge of OBAN.
Nope, I do not. It's also on the list of things I would like to learn.
It's on my list too, and I think Richard has asked me a few times too. It will be
Yeah.
future content for sure, because
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
there's just not enough time in the day, guys. I wish there was.
Yeah. No, but Oban is, I would say, one of the most like the libraries I hear of the most when it's like when you use Phoenix and Elixir. This is one of the most paired libraries I always hear about. So I think
Yeah,
it's like pretty much I consider it like it should be part of like the standard library or something.
yeah, it sounds like it for
Uh-huh.
sure.
Mhm.
Nice. Well, are there any exciting things in the near future that you're going to do, or any cool projects that you're going to make YouTube videos about?
Nothing that I can think of. Like honestly, like the last couple videos, like, I finish up my project. It's like, oh, I should share this. And then the second follow-up video, it was just like a random tweet thread that I saw from Wout and another a community member talking about YJS and how it can't be, how there's no Elixir port. And then I figured out how to do. It's like, what, I'm going to share this too, right? So it'll probably be something like that. It's like something's going to happen. I'm like, oh, this might be something worth sharing, and then I will make something.
No, I love it. And I like before we jumped on, I was telling you how much I love your diagrams that you drew and just your presentation.
Hmm.
It's very much like Pragmatic Studios, how they break down the concepts.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's such a good way to like understand how like just the interaction between client and server, and then like how pub sub works. I
Hmm.
think it's a good visualization.
Yeah. And I think we talked about this before we started the stream, but yeah, I learned a lot from Pragmatic Studio, so I want to definitely give a shout out to them. And I'm sure like some of their diagrams probably was in my head when I was making those diagrams. I was like, oh
No,
yeah, this is a good way to
pragmatic
explain it.
Pragmatic Studios has great videos.
Yeah.
Like especially I like their most recent the live view stuff that they just did. I think it breaks it down so well, because I've always been a back-end developer, so I struggle. Like, really, Phoenix LiveView is the first like front-end framework that I've really dove into. Like, I've always could like hack my way through things, but Phoenix LiveView is the first one that I've tried to actually like fully understand how it works, and like the life cycle and everything. They do such a great job breaking that down.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, yeah, I pretty much learned everything I know about Elixir from, first of all, the official docs, and then everything else from Pragmatic Studio.
I love it. Well, I'm so happy that you jumped on and did this with me. It was
Yeah, of course.
awesome. It was awesome meeting you. If anyone has questions for Tony, now's the chance to ask him. But like I tell you, these hours, they go past quick. I always am concerned. I'm not like, can I really talk about Elixir for an hour? Turns out I can.
Yes. Yeah, I'm
Week,
always surprised as well.
yeah, week after week, I can talk about Elixir for an hour. So we have a lot of viewers. Tony's a popular guy.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah. All right. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Tony, thanks so much for jumping on. I really appreciate you being here. And this was a lot of fun. And if you do anything cool and want to jump back on, just reach out to me, and we'll do another one of those.
No, sounds good. Yeah, I'll definitely let you know, and I'll try to get those links I told you about as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'll also add them to the description of this so everyone else can have them too. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, and have a good weekend, guys.
Okay, take care.
Enjoying the video? Show some love with a like and hit subscribe to stay updated. To support me and keep the content free, click join for memberships or pick up a course at elixirmentor.com and get free access to my private community. Let's jump back in. Testing.